Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am here with Bulla Boma, and we are going to be talking about Project Management Institute's Project Management Office Certified Professional Certification, and more importantly, the value that project management offices or PMOs can bring to an organization. Project Management Institute, they launched their new certification in 2025. And so we are both certified, myself and Bulla, and we want to share some of the tips from our study habits and what the exam felt like, and then just some of our additional thoughts. So Bulla, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Kandis. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We would love it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, and what it is that you do?
So I'm in project management with about 18 years of experience in practicing, in training, in consulting in project management. I've worked in a number of projects from telecommunications projects to real estate and even construction, and now consulting and banking as well. And I'm also equally passionate about PMOs because that's been the center of the work that I've been doing over the years. Right now, I run the training services and operations at Hebo. Hebo Group is a consulting and training firm. Basically, we deal with building capacity. We're based in East Africa, and we run our services across the sub-Saharan Africa. We build capacity specifically in project management. The way we do this is through training professionals and through consulting, and also providing advisory services within the space of project management. We are authorized training providers of PMI and a few other accrediting bodies. And so with that, we're able to facilitate the range of certifications by PMI from the PMP, RMP, ACP, and soon the PMOCP as well. So as you said, I am certified with a number of certifications, including the new certifications for PMO, which is the PMI PMO-CP, which is what we're talking about today. My background is in IT, but also I do a lot of business administration and project management across these different sectors. So we serve clients from public sectors to private sectors across different industries, because our goal is to be able to disseminate project management knowledge, project management practices, to improve on teams' ways of working, and to generate value for organizations in general.
Fantastic. I'm so excited to have you, especially with all of your credentials, your knowledge, your experience. And I know from getting in the classroom with other professionals that it's great to knowledge share. You always get to learn a little bit about their world of project management. And I know that it's a very broad topic. So thank you for being here again. Project Management Institute, they deployed their new PMOCP certification in February of 2025. I sat for the exam in May of 2025, and you sat for the exam in July of 2025. I'm happy to report that you and I both, we studied and prepared for it well, because we did pass it on our first attempt. Could you tell us a little bit, Bulla, about your experience in preparing for the PMOCP examination? What did you find useful? What did you use as study resources? And do you have any tips for others?
So my journey with the PMI PMO-CP certification, I would say, has been an interesting and a rewarding one. I took the exam in July, but I think I officially started studying in June. of this year. So I took about a month, and maybe let me first say why I wanted to do this certification. Because of the work that I do, the experience that I do actually have in implementing PMOs, in supporting PMOs, in setting up PMOs. It was very important for me. As soon as I heard of this new certification, I was like, you know what? This is something I need to take on. And then, of course, as a trainer, as a coach, and a consultant, I need as much knowledge that is out there as possible so that I train on the right things and I support our clients the right way. So I couldn't do it as soon as it came out, but in June, I embarked on the journey officially. And what I started with was the official on-demand course that's offered by PMI. That's a 10-hour course. So I took that on. I did it for a few days, and I would say it's very, very resourceful. It's also very user-friendly, and it's very, very practical. It did help me a lot in not just prepare for the exam, but really get to immerse myself into the process of effectively building PMOs with the focus on value, because that's the main thing that the value ring actually does focus on. And I find that to be very, very effective. If I'm to add my experience and my knowledge in project management, stakeholders and value delivery is basically the top priority of why we actually do projects, why organizations invest in project management. So I did that course for about a week, and then I also downloaded the PMO practice guide. Very extensive guide, and I like how it's actually called guide and not standard, because that also does say that it is a useful toolkit. I look at it as a useful tool to practice, for practitioners to implement, to improve on their PMOs. So I went through that book. I want to say end to end, but I did as much as possible because I was limited with time. And I still find it resourceful even up to now. Even after doing my certification, I'm still actually using it. So that was helpful. And then I connected with you, Kandis, and got to find out that you do have a simulator. So that was also very useful for practice, because it's one thing to actually study, it's one thing to go through the course, but as a trainer, I know it's also important to practice a few questions. In the course being very new, I did struggle a bit to find useful practice questions out there. But your simulator that's available on Udemy, I've looked at it, I've used it, and I still find it quite resourceful because it gets to engage with the practicalities of what an effective PMO, a value-driving PMO should actually be set up like. So with those three resources, really, I went through the book one more time, and then I went to redo the course, the PMI on-demand course, just to make sure that I've covered all the elements. But I think, and then I went to do the exam. So I did it in about a month, but I don't know if I would say everybody should do it that quick. Perhaps for other professionals, depending on your experience, depending on your knowledge, you may want to take a little bit more time to contextualize the different elements within the practice guide, maybe go through it at least twice before sitting for the exam. I did the exam online. I opted to do it online because that was more practical for me. And I would say the exam is also quite relevant, quite practical, and also doable if you are in the PMO field, if you're working in projects, if you're practicing PMO, maybe practitioner, maybe leader, and if you do understand the course content, then it is an exam that is doable and certainly a credential that is valid, especially in the dynamics that we're in now, where businesses are actually looking for value. So as PMOs, we've got to drive value.
Wonderful. I think we prepared in a very similar way. And so thank you for sharing your journey. I did the exact same thing. I went through Project Management Institute's online exam preparation for the PMO-CP. I definitely downloaded the PMO practice guide. And I also encountered some blockers when I was looking for resources beyond that to help me study. And I remember just really looking hard to try to find the PMO value ring framework that aligned with the current version of the PMO practice guide. And what I found is that a lot of the exam preparation materials was based on the older PMO value ring. And the way that I was able to know the difference, the current version from 2025, it's got kind of 5 main phases. So exploration, design, deployment, enhancement, and realization when we're talking about a PMO delivering value to customers. And within each of those, it's divided into 2 additional components. So when you're looking at the overall value ring that comes from the 2025 PMO practice guide, there really should be 10 steps associated with the PMO value ring. And I noticed that the previous version was 8 steps. So I just want to call that out because I can't think of anything worse than studying the wrong materials for the PMO exam, the PMO-CP exam. So if you're finding study materials that have 8 steps in the PMO value ring, stop right there. You are not looking at the current version. Make sure that you're looking for the 10-step PMO value ring framework. And to your point, I couldn't find much. And so that is why we created a simulator and got something out there on Udemy. I figured if you can't find it, create it. And that was actually helpful. Writing a lot of the questions prior to the examination helped me study. And then realizing that a lot of the questions on the exam were very scenario based. And they would give you a ton of information and a scenario, and then ask you to select all from the options below, or ask you for the one correct answer. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience? What did you find regarding the questions on the exam? Were they what you expected? Did you feel prepared?
So because I did mine, I had a very short time frame because of my schedule. Walking into the exam, I almost felt a bit unprepared, but I thought, you know what? Let me just take the leap because I've been practicing and I implement these things. So let me go ahead and do it. What you've said about the flywheel, absolutely important. I partially was expecting the questions to be very focused on the steps. And that's not what I found in the exam, which is also very delightful because, as you said, it's scenario-based questions. So they're really practical. They're really testing your effectiveness as a PMO. Yeah, in terms of either setting up a PMO or running a PMO or delivering values to actually be able to solve practical problems within organizations. So I really liked that about the questions, and it removes the essence of candidates having to cram, to memorize. The steps are good, but it's a guide. So in practicality, when it comes to implementation, different organizations, different teams will require different ways of implementing and improving on the maturity of their PMOs. So I think the exam was very okay. It was quite all right, very, very well structured, questions, scenario based. I prefer that than multiple choices, which are based on definitions, because that's more theory. It doesn't really give you the essence of what you would have to do in practice, which I believe that certifications are credentials that should actually help enforce, yes, the skills, but also validate a professional's ability to be able to apply those skills in the work that they do. So for those who are preparing for the PMO-CP exam, I would say yes, study the content, go through the course, go through the practice guide, understand the practice guide. And the beauty of the practice guide, it also has a lot of assessment templates within the appendix, which are also very, very useful. They can be tailored to professionals within different organizations to actually use them to assess their PMOs, to improve on their PMOs, advance their PMOs to deliver even more value to organizations.
And I completely agree. I think the word that you used that I can connect with very much is delighted. When I was able to download the PMO practice guide and start going through it, I was thrilled because you can apply it. And our organization, Effective Flow Connections, works a lot with different clients to help them establish a PMO, either from the beginning or to come in and help them refine it. And I was delighted that the PMO practice guide focuses on delivering value to customers, to the organization. And it really does give you a step-by-step of how to assess the current state of, really building awareness, going through that needs assessment, and then tailoring the services. So they really lean away from a one-size-fits-all and make sure that you know your customers and what they need, and then tailor your services and support and PMO to that. So that just delighted me more than I can say. And I studied for about a month for the exam as well. And I think that in addition to the resources we've talked about, experience was a big component for me. I think if I was trying to take a crash course in all of the PMO practice guide and the, exam preparation materials provided by Project Management Institute without having any experience working on a PMO or setting up PMOs, I think it would have been much harder. So I did take the exam in a testing center only because that took the added pressure of worrying about internet connection or having an interruption away. So I'm glad that, you were able to take it online. I was able to take it in a testing center, and we both had a good experience. Thinking about the PMO value ring and the flywheel, what do you think works best regarding the different steps in here and adding value to an organization? And then I'll ask you second, so you could decide how you answer it. Where do you see PMOs struggle the most with, delivering to their customers?
So the value ring, and I'm really glad that you brought this up. As you've said, it's more of a step-by-step process of how to effectively either set up or enhance your PMO. If I let me reflect a little bit on my experience. When I was starting off in my PMO journey, my very first role was to set up a PMO for a telecommunication company. What I did then was immediately go in, because with the skills that I had as a project manager, I immediately went in and started to set up the structure, put together processes, put together a governance structure, and immediately put the processes, get the tools in place, and immediately start. That did not work very well for me. Adoption became very, very difficult. And before I knew it, it was a struggle to even validate the effectiveness of a PMO or why the organization actually even needs a PMO. Now, fast forward to the work that I'm doing now, with supporting other organizations in setting up the PMOs, I do see the importance of, starting the right way by assessing the needs, starting with understanding what your customer wants. Because when I'm looking at PMOs right now, I'm looking at PMOs as service providers within an organization or within, a function or within a unit. That means if you're a service provider and you're looking at when we're reflecting on the PMO value ring and the flywheel, the customer is at the center of everything that you do as a PMO. And you cannot provide the service if you haven't really focused on the customer. So coming back to the flywheel with the 10 steps, I see that they are very practical because step number 1 starts with awareness. If now, and what I advise other professionals right now, as you start to even think of setting up a PMO, start with looking at the organization first and creating awareness, because if there is no awareness, either you don't know your customers or your customers do not know the kind of service that you will provide to them as a PMO. And that's a recipe for disaster. So I like the value, and I think this is one of the very important parts, to really start with building awareness. What's the PMO bringing to the table? How is the PMO going to be supporting the customers? And as we're building awareness, we're also assessing the needs, right? As we do the needs assessment, which is the second step within the flywheel, ideally, it is a good opportunity to understand our customers, to understand the stakeholders, and really get to understand their pain points. Because with that, which I consider to be the most important aspect of building or PMOs, of enhancing PMOs, is to start with value, start with generating, understanding what is of value to the customers that we're serving. So that's one of the interesting parts for me from the flywheel, step number 1 and step number 2. And I think that builds up to step number 3, which is, since now we know what our customers want, we understand their pain points, we're able to start building the right kind of proposition for them. Yeah. So that we don't build on the wrong things, because that's initially when I was starting off as a PMO, that's what I did. I thought I knew everything. So I set up the governance structure, I set up the processes, the policies, without really looking at what kind of projects are we implementing, what kind of the projects is the organization actually gearing, what kind of pain points is the PMO going to be addressing? Yeah. So, Kandis, I would say with the first, I think all the way to the third and the fourth step. So the good thing with the flywheel, it kind of builds up, Step number 1 builds up towards step number 2. Step number 2 now builds towards step number 3, which is value proposition, and then developing services. So this also does create alignment. And what I also like about this is that it's not just for PMOs, but it's really for project management in general. To deliver value is the ultimate goal. Now, for PMOs specifically, it's always a struggle to justify, or I've seen it as a struggle to justify the existence of PMOs, because any kind of unit is an investment for the organization. Yeah, one day a leader may say, the management may say, you know what, we're struggling with our projects, let's get a PMO. But that could also easily go out of the window if there is no value that the PMO is generating. Now, for us as PMO practitioners, as PMO leaders, it's important to make sure that whatever work we're doing, we are generating value. And value means different things. Value would mean something different for you in comparison to what value would mean for me. So understanding the needs and then developing the right kind of proposition in terms of the services that a PMO would provide, I think are the main key elements. But if I can just add on to that, then, service onboarding, and then monitoring the operations, the services. And finally, the last two elements I think are also very, very important. I do see that a lot of PMOs, especially for matured organizations, tend to be doing the same things over and over. And sometimes value gets depleted along the way over the years. So the Flywheel incorporating these last two steps, value delivery and value recognition, I think these are also very, very important because they provide an opportunity to actually, go back and quantify the PMO's impacts to the organization and justify why the PMO actually exists. And finally, the other part, the last step, which is recognition. This is also very, very key because if you're providing value, also it's good that that value is recognized. Yeah, the value is acknowledged, and all the stakeholders and customers are happy, and they actually recognize the value that PMOs are providing. This way, when we call PMOs service providers, they indeed become indispensable. Because I think we can both agree PMOs are valuable. The only issue that comes in that becomes tricky is how do you justify that value? Yeah, so I think this Flywheel is a very good step-by-step guide to either creating PMOs, starting with value, and even ending with value. So whether the PMO is just starting off or the PMO is already advanced and it's looking to enhance and continuously improve, this Flywheel certainly works very well. And this is also because with recognizing that different PMOs require different organizations require different services from the PMOs. So there is no, as you say, there's no one size that will fit all. So the essence of starting from the angle of understanding the needs, building awareness and understanding the needs, I think is very, very imperative to success.
You laid that out perfectly. Thank you so much. And I couldn't agree more. We have to start by asking why. That awareness building, that first step, and then moving into the needs assessment. When a client reaches out to us and says, hey, we'd love for you to help us establish a PMO, we really need to understand what they're hoping to solve for by establishing a PMO. What challenges are you currently having and why? I just like to keep asking the question why. Because if you don't know why you're establishing a PMO, then whenever you get to the end, which we're talking about steps 9 and 10, so value delivery and value recognition, it's very hard to say, here's where we started, and here's what we defined as success, and here's what we've actually done by implementing a PMO. So I agree. We've got to make sure that we understand the needs of a specific organization. And even within the organization, they may have PMOs at different levels. So the PMO practice guide talks a lot about ePMOs or enterprise level project management offices, but not every PMO is an ePMO. So you may have a PMO that's established at a department level. You may even have a PMO that is just for one huge project. And so we need to understand where the PMO sits within the organization, what problems we're solving before we even start thinking about what the services look like. And I used to think early in my project management career that PMOs were all about standardization. We're going to design a toolkit and we're going to train people and you have to do it a certain way. And I think that some people, some customers, some organizations still think of PMOs as kind of red tape or overhead. And so
Right.
if we're able to change that mindset and start with why, and then educate the entire organization on the why, and then actually tailor the services to what they need, we can help dissipate that misconception that it's just about adding more levels and more red tape and more work for people. Because really, I think PMOs, they allow you to do a great job of rolling up a lot of different data that can help leaders make better decisions and do so much more than just standardization. And so as I've gotten more hands-on within my career, that's one thing that I've realized, that standardization may be a part of it, maybe even a small part of it, but we need to look bigger picture. What's the value for the organization that we're working within? So thank you for walking us through that flywheel.
Kandis, I think this is where the mindset shift comes into play as well. When we're looking at PMOs moving from just providing technical support to really being strategic pillars to support organizations in delivering value, I see that this new PMO guide by PMI and even the flywheel actually does help us really look at things from a different perspective. Yeah. And it all depends on the organization. It depends on the functions. It depends on the stages that the organization is, whereby we can easily tailor the kind of PMO that is suitable for the particular stage that the organization is in.
Yes, absolutely. I know, Bulla, that you recently attended the PMI Global Series Summit in Africa. Tell us a little bit about your experience and any of your main takeaways while you were there.
Yes, I did attend the Global Series Summit Africa in Kigali, which is about 2 weeks ago. Very, very rich forum conference. And there was a lot of discussion around Africa development. The theme was Africa on Purpose. And one of the key takeaways was that the work that project managers do is necessary work, is impactful work, with the phrase that angels are project managers. And project managers can be angels because project managers create impact every day, transform and improve on our communities, improve on, infrastructure, be it technology, ways of working, ways of life in general. So Africa as a continent definitely requires more project managers, and in line with setting up the right kind of structures, which is around PMO. There was a lot of discussions on PMO, including rethinking the value of PMOs and shifting from just delivery to creating impact. And this is also in line with refocusing PMOs from just being, technical support wings, from just policing to actually serving organizations. So my key takeaway is a quote that was shared by Americo, the director for PMO Global Community. The value of a PMO is not a destination, but a continuous journey of evolution and transformation. And this speaks of, PMOs evolving to becoming more strategic drivers, to supporting organizations to deliver value. And as PMO practitioners, also evolving to improve on whatever work that we're doing, from just technical support, or it could even be just strategic support. Also understanding that it doesn't matter what name your PMO is, whether it's tactical, operational, or strategic. It comes down to the value that the PMO is providing to the customers that the PMO is serving. So it's that mindset shift is also another thing that I actually left with from all the discussions and, the presentations, the discussions, the engagements. They really, solidify the shift of mindset in terms of the way that we've been actually structuring PMOs and the future of what PMOs or even VMOs. So the name doesn't really matter. Centers of excellence. You can call your PMO anything as long as it is actually driving value. That's the future that we're looking at.
That's such an amazing quote. I really love that. And, we've talked a lot about the flywheel today. And I think it's important to call out that the flywheel really is intended to be iterative as well. So once we really look at that value recognition in step 10, we can go back and continue to improve the services that the project management offices deliver. There's so much more to the PMO practice guide. And I want our listeners to know that for each of these 10 steps in the PMO flywheel, that you can dive very deep into them. And there's tools associated with the PMO practice guide for each of those steps. And then even before getting into that flywheel, we really need to make sure that our PMO is set up for success by thinking about the PMO mandate, thinking about the PMO governance, and really thinking about the PMO strategy. I think we could continue to go very, very deep into the PMO practice guide. And I'll just leave it by saying that even if you're not going to sit for the PMO-CP exam right now, maybe later, this is a great guide. And you can download it on Project Management Institute's website if you're a PMI member. So go ahead and check the comments below for where you can link directly to this guide and download it. We're also going to be sharing some additional resources below regarding frequently asked questions for the PMO-CP, and also where you can go out and get access to the exam simulator and kind of go through practice questions and get more and more comfortable with the materials. With that, I'd love to ask you, Bulla, how can our listeners find you? Where should they look for you if they want to connect or learn more about the training or the consulting that you offer?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can check out my LinkedIn. We can connect. I'll be very happy to do that. But you can also visit our website, hebogroup.com, to view the services, the different programs in terms of trainings and support that you can actually provide in growing your project management skills and expertise. And for organizations as well, looking to build capacity, please do check out our website.
One thing that Project Management Institute does not have yet, but we are aware that it's coming, and I think you and I are both very excited about it, is the PMOCP exam preparation as far as live training with an instructor. Once we learn more about that, we'll certainly share that with our listeners. Is there anything that you'd like to share regarding what you've heard about that upcoming training?
Absolutely. So the instructor-led live version of the PMOCP training is going to be up, and PMI is going to soon authorize instructors to actually offer the training. So keep an eye out if you are, keen on studying in an interactive way in a live environment. Definitely, we will have this course available from the fourth quarter of this year. So do keep an eye out on our pages, and we'll be happy to announce as soon as it's out.
Well, I just want to thank you again for taking the time to join me today and just share a wealth of knowledge with our listeners. It's been so wonderful to be able to connect with you and collaborate with you. I'm glad that the PMO-CP brought us together. And so thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Kandis. Always a pleasure.